Well, yeah, I'll kick this off. Firstly, just thank you so much everyone for coming. Yeah, there's a ton of really good talks on at the moment, so I really appreciate you coming and spending your time with me and talking about The Sims and some of the stuff that we get up to. Yeah, so this talk called Reinventing the Meta, just going to be talking about meta systems, interesting challenges that we had in the game and how we kind of came up with some cool solutions to solve those. So a bit about me real quick. One day I'll get a professional headshot done. Until then, it's selfie I took at Kmart. But yeah, my name's Adric Polkinghorne. I'm a game designer at EA Firemonkeys. I've been in the industry for about 10 years, doing whole kinds of different stuff, some academia, various studios, Snapchat, now EA. Previously had my indie time, made a game called Think of the Children, released that on everything, made it with the wonderful Zach here, great programmer. And done some cool stuff in academia, was doing my PhD, took a break from that to come work at EA, really should finish that one sometime, but yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, soul to everyone. So what to expect in this? So firstly, just going to spend a decent amount of time going over some of the information on the kind of challenges that we faced. There's a lot to unpack here, and the goal of that is that you can get some information on how to avoid these in the future for any of your games. This should apply not just to AAA or anything. It can be the smallest indie game. All games have these kind of meta games that we want to really just help the player along through. So hopefully this will help out. I'm going to cover what makes an effective metagame loop, the process of going and crafting a new loop in your game, and a bit of a discussion on how to value your players and respect them. And then some cool stuff on how we use tabletop prototyping to validate these ideas. And then at the end we'll have some questions and chats, or we'll go get a coffee. Sometimes I've noticed that I have to press a couple times to jump to the next slide. So if you're not particularly familiar with the Sims FreePlay, so we are a town builder, a house builder, and a life simulation game. We're mobile, we're on iOS and Android, and we've been running for 14 years. It's been a long haul. So a bit of the lore of what's going on. So we're a town builder primarily. It's our main kind of driving focus, and it's what separates us from the core branch of Sims 4. Within our town, it's full of dollhouses, and this is that traditional Sims experience that players seek, where you can design, decorate, have families, simulation. One of the key differences in our game is that you're managing a town just full of Sims, rather than just a couple families. There's a lot of Sims in our game, and players are always asking for more as well. And one of the big challenges is that we have 14 years worth of content. We've just been delivering update after update, constantly expanding our game. And within this, there's just a very extensive library of base game content. There's a lot of options for the players to choose from, and that kind of, spoilers, is how we get into some of our challenges. We are constantly trying to improve the game. We always have initiatives going to make it as good as we can. We recently had Niels and Ivan do a talk on the lighting update. I want to just give a quick little, if it'll let me. Yeah, so this is a scene taken from one of our houses prior to our lighting update. And this is it after they went through and introduced ray tracing. How they managed to do, I sadly couldn't make the talk, so I still don't know how they managed to get ray tracing into a mobile game like this, but it is an insane effort making all the different objects work. It looks beautiful now. So a bit more on this. So when I joined, it was back in 2021, kind of tail end of COVID, and I immediately got put onto this big project called the Meta Rework. It was something that had been drummed up for a little bit, and the goal here was, in particular, we really wanted to boost our base game engagement. We have so much content, but players didn't really know where to go, and there was very much a choice overload. Players were behind in a lot of really important metrics. In particular, one of them that stood out was that players were behind in the amount of Sims that they could have. We have a cap at any given level, and it increases as you get better at the game and build your town out more. But players were consistently behind on this number. And this had a lot of really disastrous impacts that people weren't necessarily that aware of. So less Sims means you're just making less money in the game. Less money means you can't build as much. Less buildings means you're not progressing as much. And the progression is what unlocks all the cool stuff in build mode that the players want. They want to go into that dollhouse and build that dream house of theirs and simulate and roleplay with their Sims. But they have to progress through the game in order to get that. And so what we end up seeing from this is that you end up with a lower base game participation, where the kind of fundamental content of our game is not getting engaged with anywhere near as much as it should be. We then also have lower live event participation. The players just don't have the amount of Sims that they need to actually go and engage with that content. So both the critical content and the optional content is just not getting engaged with as much as it should be. Players run into greater friction with our kind of scalings in the game. They just don't have the simoleons in order to actually further develop and build and grow in the game. And they're just less progression throughout the main quest line that we have throughout the game. And yeah, we have discoverable quests and all this optional content as well that was there. And this was all, just a lot less engagement with everything. So this kind of, put us in a state where we're pretty sad. So breaking this down a bit further, I dove in and started to really look at okay, what are the exact problems here? So one of the first things we identified is that there's a bit of a breakdown between the player's goals and the game's goals, or our goals as developers. There was this opaque path of progression throughout the game. Players would jump in the game, they complete the fatui, and then after that, a really guided experience like a fatui, and then they'd leave that and then be left kind of on their own to figure things out. This wasn't reinforced. There was no systems here that were driving them and really pushing them to engage with that content or point them in the right direction. And the path to unlock the kind of key features that the players were chasing was opaque. There's all kinds of different things. Players have different, and I'll get to this in a moment, but players have a lot of different goals whenever they're launching a game. And they want to know how they can access that content, but we weren't telling them. We had player pitfalls that could hurt progression. So if you did go and spend all your time building a really beautiful house, that's actually slowing you down in building that next thing that you need in order to advance in the game. We had this weird thing where just leveling kind of just happened. XP was the only requirement to level, and you got it everywhere. Didn't matter what you did. You could drink water for 1,000 hours, and you could hit max rank in the game. It didn't really matter what. We just had this weak meta structure, kind of relating back to this idea of reinforcement. We lacked something that would unify all of our game's content together and provide a structure that would help the players set their kind of long-term goals in the game. And what we weren't rewarding was spending money on the things that would progress you. It wasn't actually really actually giving them that progress that they're chasing. So the final kind of points on that is the plane was already in the air. This is a 14-year-old game. And from that point, players have started branching. They're in all different kinds of game states. It's in a very unpredictable and chaotic state. And there's not really anything that we can do about that immediately. We can't take the game offline. Anything that we were going to do had to be part of an update that would roll out to players. And years of this weak meta structure and this really high level of player choice, and that our players' game states were just completely in all different kinds of states. In other games, you might expect a person at this level would be at this point in the game, and we just didn't have that. We had no clue. So with no clear, predictable game state that anyone was in, we needed to come up with something that would be accommodating for new and existing players, regardless of what their level was. So, talked enough about those kind of problems, but let's jump into kind of one of the core ideas, which is that players start forming goals before they even install your game. Now, what do I mean by this? Players enter your game with goals based on their existing knowledge of your game. This can be from trailers, it can be from screenshots, existing games in that IP, other games in the genre. There is a reason why that player actually installed your game in the first place, and they're chasing that content. If they don't get it, they could churn out, they could just close the game, but they're chasing that. And we're a Sims game. Players have expectations from that. I'd just like to throw quickly, especially if you haven't played the Sims FreePlay before, if you were installing it right now, what would you be wanting to do? Just shout out. The dollhouse, yeah. Just want to play.
Sims at the same time and make them do crack stuff.
Yeah.
Sims in a pool.
Yeah. Exactly right. This is exactly the kind of content that the players would be chasing. And outside of the Fatui, which would help drive them through that, we didn't really have anything that was really just pointing them hey, if you play our game and get to this point, you will get that content you're chasing. So we needed to find a way to message these goals in particular to players, and really meet our players at the middle and show them where they can go. So we had this moment-to-moment kind of gameplay disconnect where we're trying to do one thing and the players are chasing one thing, and we're not connecting there. And this gives us this great challenge of it's the sandbox versus the progression. So our game goals. This is kind of as a developer, what do you want the players to be doing? So we want them to be leveling up, we want them to be unlocking content, we want them to be building out the town map. Our players, though, this is what they want to be doing. They want the sandbox, they want build mode, they want to build their houses, and they want to play with their Sims. And there's this disconnect between these two things. But there is this good news in that, which is that with a good progression system, the reward for doing the game's goals is the player goals. We can drive them into that content using something like a meta system. So a caveat to that, I guess, would be, why not just give the players what they want? If that's the content they're chasing, why don't we just launch the game straight into exactly that? Progression really has been a critical part of The Sims since the very first game. It is a simulator first and a sandbox second. And so kind of what I mean by this is that, going back to Sims 1, some of the funnest stuff was getting that first job. You start in that absolutely just dilapidated house, and you get your first job, and you start to earn money, and you build up, and getting promoted finally from being a lab rat to a lab assistant was this great, exciting moment. And with that came more money, more things that you could build in your house lot, and you got to live this life that you were chasing. We don't want to just be handed everything on a silver platter. We want that kind of life sim, and we want to grow. And this kind of starts to highlight at this idea that progression in games has two different forms. The first being structural progression, and the second being experiential progression. So with structural progression, what we have is this is that journey towards new experiences. This is the game helping you get there, it's leveling up, it's unlocking new things. And things like completing quests. It helps drive you further and deeper through the game and engage with it further. Then our experiential progression, what there we're looking at is that feeling of progression. I feel like I'm doing well. It's a response to feedback that the game is giving you. It's things like leveling up. And so we need to show from this how we could give those players that experience that they're chasing using our kind of structure. So structural progression looks something like this. It's a lot more like a railroad. A railway, that's the word. And then experiential progression is more like the open road. You can do whatever you want, you can go wherever you want. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to achieve that railway and railroad the players in a way. But we want it to feel like this. We want it to feel open and good. Now, railroading has a negative connotation immediately. It sounds bad. But clear linear paths for the player is actually really critical for the success of your game. players will actually have a much fairer and better experience with the more structure that you give them. And this hints on this idea that it's actually can be more player first, which is an EA goal of ours, a motto we stand by, that player freedom isn't always actually player first. You need to help the players get to where they want to go. And even just looking at real life, like there's a reason why trains are still just the most efficient form of transport. They have low friction rails. They have a very predictable path. The customer knows where they're going. And it's just a quick, comfortable ride. So for us, we have that challenge of we're a town builder and we're a simulation game. And this is one of our biggest strengths. It helps us diversify and stand out in the crowd. There's a lot of town builders out there and there's simulation games out there, but we are really unique in this front. There's not a lot that do both well. But it's also one of our biggest challenges because we have this issue of, that we have different player expectations. So we need to try and balance these. And so this is where we jump in that if you don't help set the players, help them set goals, they will start setting their own goals based off their expectations of your game. So player choice then can come at the cost of your structural progression. So things like an issue that we had is that players could buy the wrong thing. If they jumped in and just spent all of their money building up that dollhouse, they then can't afford that critical item that they need to buy for their quest that they're on. And so just a suggestion for people is one way that you could deal with this is try and separate out those currencies. We use simoleons a lot throughout the game. It's an iconic currency. But there might be an opportunity there to do something like splitting this, where you have the money that you spend for playing versus the money that you spend for progressing. And here, your quest rewards is one of the best ways that you can handle this. It's like these should be structural and experiential. So give your players that structural win here of like, I got exactly what I need to level up from that quest. But at the same time, I feel like I'm doing really well, and I got a cool hat that proves it. So we've covered a lot of the background stuff. Let's just jump into now, like, okay, how do you actually build this? So back to kind of basics a bit. It really goes down to your core loop. So what actually is a core loop? So this is that chain of repeated actions that leads to progression in your game. At its simplest, it's something like this. Just action, rewards, progression. Players do a thing, they get a reward, and they progress throughout your game. And the best kind of core loops throughout games is something that's compelling, it's engaging, and it's rewarding for the players. And it should be things that inspire the players to achieve there. So what this looks like for us is we have this kind of core loop. So players would first, they select their goals that they want to achieve. They then assign their sims to help do that goal. They finish the goal. They get a reward for doing their goal. And then you use that reward to progress the town. The meta loop of that is then, that feeds into, is that they unlock that deeper simulation game. They get the clothing and outfits and unlocks and customizations there. They get the building customization to develop their house. They get to expand their town. They get to increase their sim population. Your meta system here is like, it's a really good way of telling the players how they will get there, what they're chasing from completing the core loop. And it is the experiential progression that is tied to that structural progression from your core loop. So an example of this in action in our game, here is, we've got lots of quests in our game. Our quests are made up of just really simple goals. This one has some narrative blurb, and then it clearly tells the player exactly what they need to do. Have a sim, watch Sim Chef on TV. But beyond that as well, they also unlock features for completing these quests. And we give like a little hint of that at the bottom there, where we just straight tell the player, hey, complete the breadwinner quest to unlock the cooking hobby. It's perfect for sims that are partial to the culinary arts. Players that are chasing that kind of culinary experience within the game, they know straight away that, hey, if I complete this, I'll get to do that. And this is where we then jump into the new. We've gone through a lot of setup, and let's start talking about actual solutions. So when we put this all together, what we end up coming up with is this meta requirement system. So Gone was just leveling up and doing whatever it took, whatever got you that level up. And instead, we're going to start asking the players to do things in order to level up. So breaking this down, our first one that we have is XP. It's still there. It's a simple. It helps you pace the level. This can be really critical, particularly in like mobile games where you want a level to take a certain amount of time, but you can use this anywhere. It's a really great tool for just pacing, and it's simple, easy to understand. Our next one is adding a sim. This goes back to this issue where we had this problem where the players just weren't having enough sims and they were hurting themselves by doing that. So we decided to just take that decision away and say, you must do this because it will be good for you. It's a really good safety net to stop the players from self-sabotaging. Constructing a building. We are a town builder. We want the players to be developing the town, and that's a core thing that we're trying to get across to them. And so having this direct reinforcement of this is something you need to do helps to then guide those players away from spending money on the things that they don't necessarily need right now and spending it on the things that's going to help drive them deeper into the game. And we just made this, any can build anything. It doesn't matter. Building will just drive you through. We then start to get into some of our more our options that react more to the player's experience. So our first one there was complete a progression quest. This is like our linear path throughout the game and drives a lot of unlocking content. The second one we have then is completing discovery quests. These are more like the side quests that you can do. There's many that you can tackle them in any order. But we unlock this later because we want to ramp up some of the difficulty and not overload the players immediately. But yeah, these last two in particular are very important. Because one of the key things that we did here, going back to this issue of we don't know what state the player is in based on their levels, is that we need to make everything contextual. So these level requirements, they look simple at first, but everything there is taking into account the player's game state. So it checks where they're at and it makes sure that those requirements are appropriate. If a player had all of the sims that they needed already, that requirement just doesn't show. If they have all the XP they need, they're good. It's done. It's ticked off already. Yeah, very simple. So like add a sim, for instance, it's only there if they're required. It actually scales and it's a little bit harder and you have to add more than just one sim. You might have to add 2 or 3 if you're like particularly far behind, because we know that it's really impactful if you are in that state. Our next one is like constructing a building. It's only if they actually have things to build. If they've built out the town already, we don't need to have this requirement. And then it re-enables itself if more unlocks. They build out a new region or something. And also some of the buildings were just not required. We just decided that, hey, that content isn't something that we necessarily want to force like players to have to build at some point. So we're just going to say it's excluded. If they build it, it still counts. It'll still carry them through. So we're rewarding their decisions, but we're not going to force it. Similarly with completing a quest. We check where they're up to and what they're currently working on, and then that will be like their requirement there. And this swaps to other content if they've actually finished all of their quests already. And this also excludes some certain content, which I'll go into in a moment. So yeah, our content here, the way that we broke this down further is that we put things into buckets. So we have these two main buckets, a primary bucket and a secondary bucket. And this is where most of our content lives. And it's all made here to be very responsive to the player's state. So we look at what they've done, and we say what they should do next. So just a big table of quests first, then we jump into the next thing, and then the next thing. And we work our way through that based on what the player's up to. Our primary bucket, that one contains most of our really critical gameplay. So we're always trying to push this if we can, because this is the stuff that we really want the players to complete. This is the things that unlock the most amount of content and really gets that core experience that the players are seeking, and it relates directly back to those goals that the players have set for themselves. So it's our progression quests, it's our development sites, building out these new regions with more beautiful houses. Our secondary bucket, this is more the discoverable content. So discovery quests, things like just improving the town, cleaning up regions that need help. And then finally, we have a filler bucket. So if the player has finished everything in one of these buckets, or maybe they're not at a level where there's enough to unlock, if we ever find that we just don't have something in that bucket to insert, we then draw on our filler bucket and pull out just extra little things, fun little side things that they can do, things that they largely might ignore if they didn't. So this goes back to this idea of we're trying to value the player's choices. So we have no real strenuous catch-up requirements if the player is behind. Even on that adding a sim, we only do a couple every level, because adding a sim, that could be a whole new family, or it could be a child added to an existing family. We know that there's a lot of steps that the player's going to go through to get that. So we try and, if they're particularly back, we stretch these out over multiple levels. And we have some content in our game that players are actually deliberately avoiding. There is a quest in the game that introduces death, and some people just don't want it. They don't want their Sims to die ever. They don't have to. There's mechanics there that they can rewind time a bit, and they can keep those beloved Sims alive. But some players just choose not to do this. And so we just didn't make this quest required. If you have done all your other quests, this one just, the quest requirement will go away. We hope that they'll do it at one point, because it also unlocks a bunch of great content. But yeah, we will encourage them to do it, but we don't require it. And this helped us as well. We went along and we unified a lot of the really challenging content in our game, that we knew that if we forced one of these onto a player, it could lead to that kind of grind. And so instead, we unified all of that content into one requirement. And this lets the player kind of take a pick of like which big challenge they want to tackle next. We still tell them, hey, you need to start one of these big challenges in order to level up, but hands off and take your pick, whichever one you prefer. So we have these development sites, we have this downtown developer region, all these big tasks, and we encourage the players to go there, but we don't force which one they have to pick. This is really critical here, that we're not invalidating all the years of progress and investments that players have made in this game. So wherever they are up to in the game, we're going to take that into account and we're going to adapt based off that. So that's our main part about the requirements. Our next issue that we had there is this leveling up idea. So level ups should be a meaningful and exciting moment in your game. Let's jump into that. So level ups for us, previously, I mentioned how they just happened. Players would be doing anything, and then suddenly a UI prompt will appear over their screen saying, congratulations, you leveled up. And I don't know why I did that. And this was just because XP was all that was required. And you got XP from everything. You could literally, just drink water, and you could reach the max level in the game. And in particular, long sessions in build modes, which is what the players were wanting to be doing, was leveling up. So we were reinforcing a behavior that we actually didn't want them to be doing. Leveling up unlocks all this new content, including more for build mode. So we end up with this really bad kind of feedback loop here, where they're doing the bad thing, kind of bad behavior, and then that's unlocking more things to do more bad behavior, and it just puts us into this really bad position where there's an overload of choice. There was a great talk yesterday about exactly this, and how to avoid this, so check that out on the VODs. So we did a really simple fix here, actually, and one of the things we did was we just made the players press the button to level up. Rather than it just forcing itself onto the screen, we just said, no, you can, it'll pop up and say, hey, congratulations, you've satisfied the requirements to level up. If you go ahead and press that whenever you're ready, we can move you on to the next. And this helps to reinforce the players that your actions made you level up. And this goes really well with these new level requirements, where we've started to help guide the players into doing particular things. And so now the players get this great moment where they can feel like they've done well. They did these things, they beat these challenges, and then they got to level up. And so they press the button, and then that takes us into our level up screen. Here we updated this one, and we came through and we made it better communicate to the players what they earned and what they're going to do next. So we helped start setting goal setting for that next level of players. Like, hey, you just unlocked pregnancy. That's exciting. Go and you can jump into that. And we get to highlight here all the cool stuff that they've unlocked. And they also get an option here as well to preview also what's coming up next. Why you should stick around this game, because you can see that next wave of content as well. A fun little bonus challenge. Here's a screen prior to this. It was just a sea of icons. Players could jump in and touch on all these different content throughout the game. You could actually pay to unlock content early, which creates this really distracting and confused moment where it's not actually like encouraging them to follow a clear progression path. So another fairly simple fix turned into a puddle of icons instead. So we still have these icons on the map, but we toned them down, made them smaller, got them out of the way there, so we can get the players to focus more on exactly what they should be trying to do. And we just outright removed that option to unlock content early, because it's just creating more decision paralysis in the players. So the last kind of section that I want to jump into is just like, how do we actually go about confirming these ideas? And the way that we did this was through tabletop prototyping. We had another designer there at the time, Penelope Murphy. She did a talk yesterday, I believe. It was amazing. But yeah, she got to play kind of the role of like a dungeon master here, and lead the team through this game and all the different actions they could do on it. And what we did is we really simplified our game down to some very basic actions relating to that core loop, so that we could nail down exactly these requirements and get a strong feel of like, is this how we want the game to be? And let us test our biggest changes really quickly. And yeah, we built this in Miro, a really great collaborative space, but you could do this anywhere, even just pen and paper on a table. And yeah, it's a great space. So this is just like a quick look at what it looks like. I'll break it down further, but yeah, this was all it was, just one big Miro board. And we had all these different sections that the player could interact with. It was turn-based. You had to do various particular actions one by one. But yeah, this was all it was, and it worked brilliantly for us. So I'll start to break it down. So our first thing that we did is the players had to assign Sims. So you would start up here, you'd have a certain amount of Sims based on your level, and you would have to tell them where they're going to go. Are they going to go to work and earn some money for you? Are they going to try and tackle a quest? Are they going to take care of their needs that we have in the game? Or are they going to go, rest? They've been used too much, and they need a bit of a break from doing this. And this relates back to that very first core game loop of assign your Sims. Our next one, we then had to complete goals. So we showed the player exactly where they were. We showed them what they needed to do next in order to level up. And they've just assigned their Sims. They have their pool of Sims. They figure out, okay, I need to do exactly this in order to complete that goal. So they do that. And from that, they don't earn rewards. As they completed these quests, they would move along. Each quest got harder than the next, so they had to do more. But they also unlocked cool things here. They earned currencies which they could spend. They unlocked new abilities in the game. And then this helped them jump into progressing their town. So as they did these things, as they leveled up, they then got more home lots where they could spend. We had this little mock-up and this kind of IKEA store where you could just drag and drop whatever things you needed. And this then feeds into that meta system that we're building. So you would unlock more things as you progress through the game that let you do more customization. And this was just really great for us as it confirmed our core loop. We had this new core loop and this new idea of a really strict, structured plan, and this immediately just got that, and it just made sense. We straight away got amazing buy-in from our stakeholders, and because it was really clear. They could see exactly how this was functioning. And it let us test these new level requirements before jumping in and developing them, which is really critical because it was going to be a big change. And we were particularly worried about how much effort this was going to be. But in particular, it gave us a lot of structure and purpose to that dollhouse experience, even on a little tabletop version of it. And finally, it was actually just fun. I really enjoyed playing it. So just to kind of start closing up, how did this all go? So if I go back to that slide at the start, we had all of these issues. And yeah, it looks a bit more like this now. So our goal was to improve base game engagement, and we did it. Now progression unlocks a lot of really cool stuff for the players, and they're guided through that progression. And it feels much better now. We're particularly worried about like how players would receive this when it launched, and we just didn't see that negative kind of sentiment. It kind of just worked. So it's just some takeaways for you. If you are going through these kind of processes, we kind of put together, Mike helped me with this one, just a bit of a checklist. So with your progression system, is it intentional and rewarding? Do your players, do they get to see those next goals, what they need to do clearly? If you're updating something that already exists, like we were, are you respecting those legacy investments that the players did? In those kind of cases in particular, like, does your meta system now adapt to what the players, what their different states could be in? If you have something like a big branching narrative or something, is your core meta reacting to those changes that can happen throughout that? And finally, have you prototyped this? Before you've gone and spent all that effort developing it, have you just jumped in and made something quick, play it on a pen and paper? And finally, just, remember these kind of little takeaways. So players form those goals even before they install your game. They have an expectation of your game, and if you don't deliver on that, they're going to close the game. Level ups should be really meaningful and exciting moments. And finally, just, consider that both the structural and the experiential progression, because they're just as important as each other. And that is it from me. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or you just want to chat or something, we've got a good bit of time left, so we'll go through it. Yeah, mate.
No, I'll give you mine.
Oh, sorry.
Fantastic talk, really nicely well structured, and
thanks, man. I
very
appreciate
concise
that.
run through. Can you make these slides available on
certainly.
LinkedIn or something?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Oh, sorry. I think something that was very interesting to me as someone who's worked in mobile a few times is the intentionality of leveling up, which is, I guess, something that I've seen a lot in Facebook games back in the day, but not something I see very much like in modern games where leveling up is kind of mindless. It just happens. And, in my professional experience, there is a lot of that work to be like, does the player even know what they're getting when they level up? Do they know why they level up? And that sort of communication is really difficult. But was, I guess, putting that extra friction in leveling up being, you don't just level up, you have to complete this criteria to level up. Did you find that affected, were players just like doing shit and then not knowing that the level up button was there, so they just wouldn't do it? How did that affect the, say, accessibility of your game that way?
Yeah, we did have to put in some effort there just to make sure that they would know that happened. So that screen, when they check off that final requirement, it forces on so that they see directly, oh, it got ticked off, and now my level up button has enabled. I can press it. If they closed out of that window, it would then flash. It would pop up again when they next come back into the game, things like that. So we did have to spend some effort just to make sure that we weren't just leaving them in a limbo. It's for some other games, you can actually they use that level up moment. I know I've been playing WoW Classic a bunch lately because it's just been just trying to go back and learn from it. And there's so many points where I'm about to die, and then I kill something and it levels me up, and it full heals me when I level up.
You keep playing.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh my god, yes, I get to keep going. That was so clutch. So even that, there's intentionality there that they're doing to have that kind of moment. So I think, there's a lot of different ways that you can take that, but as long as you have that intentionality and it's really impactful when a level up occurs, then the players are going to get used to it, and they're going to chase that moment. So they're going to progress deeper, and they're going to keep leveling up.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, man. We got plenty of time.
14 years is a very long time, and obviously that can lead to a huge amount of, I guess, inertia of player expectations. Were there many difficulties just in the fact that the thing they were used to has now changed? Was there resistance, complaints, or was it, I guess, small and isolated and intuitive enough that people just saw it as basically a direct upgrade to their comfortable existing experience?
I was really anxious about exactly this when we launched it, because it felt like such a big change that I was expecting a lot of like negative sentiment there of just purely its change, and we didn't really see it, and I don't exactly know why, because we do see that elsewhere. Like pretty much any kind of change we do, we always see someone. Like, Reddit is Reddit, and there's always people that will complain. And we try to listen as much as we can and do those changes. But this was one where we didn't really see that much. There was some, but it wasn't anywhere near as much as we expected. And yeah, I'm not exactly sure on why that wouldn't be the case. But I feel like part of it was that it made sense. It made sense for the players. And for a lot of, because we built it to be an adaptive system, for a lot of players, particularly those existing players, which are often the more noisy minority on Reddit and stuff, for a lot of them, not that much really changed because they've actually already completed a lot of this content. And so if they were behind on Sims, maybe they just had to add a couple more. And even if they were deliberately being behind on Sims, they could just kind of add a couple, level up, get rid of them again, and it wasn't really a problem for them. So I think just because we made it so adaptable to the different game states, no one really got a negative experience where they suddenly had to do a ton to level up. And instead, it just kind of pointed them in that right direction.
Yeah, cool. A slight follow-up on that,
Yeah,
then,
man.
I guess. Was there, in those immediate days after that launch, that update, was there a lot of commentary and praise, or did it sort of just fly under the radar of, like, player commentary and just quietly improve their game without really drawing too much attention?
Similarly as well, yeah, there was some praise. Some people really appreciated the change and thought that it would be helpful for the game. But for the most part, it kind of just slid under the radar a bit, which is kind of the perfect outcome for us. Yeah.
So being that the game is 14 years old, what was the catalyst for introducing this change? Because it was quite a big change for the game. Was there a particular moment or something that happened where the team decided this has to be the time that we change?
I think, like, without going too much into it, I'm not necessarily privy to all the behind the scenes, but we know that we want to keep the game going. We know that we have a lot more to deliver. And so part of that meant that we knew that we had to address some of these like core problems of the game. So I guess it was this moment of knowing, like, all right, if we were to have this game go for another 14 years, like, what would the game look like? Or what would it need to look like in order to get there? And so I think it's like coming from those kind of talks where less of like a big, alarm bells, like, oh my God, if we don't do something right now, we're doomed. But more just like, hey, like, what is the game that we want this to be, and how can we get it there? But yeah, as some of those points that we had, like, there was a lot of issues, and we were confident that if we addressed these, we'd get a lot more engagement with the game and help, bump like retention and things.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. Yeah. Well, I think we can call it there. You can chat more if you want. Yeah, no, go for it. You're good.
It's just us two.
So something that I've encountered a lot of times
Yeah.
working on live ops is having to rebalance the entire progression curve, like the XP curve, the things like costs and stuff. So those might fluctuate a lot. And it's easy for us because we don't have a lot of players. So, you can kind of get away with just stabbing 1,000 people in the back. But was there any point in the Sims FreePlay where you had to like radically adjust the costs of things, and how would you manage players like, oh man, I was level 100, now my XP requirement is level 70. Like, we have our own sort of ways around this, but it is a constant challenge to be like, how do we sort of, like you said, not just invalidate the player's progression and be like, well, you said you're at level 10, but we're going to put you at level 5 because that's where we decide you are,
Yeah. Thankfully, with this, like we did do a lot of retuning of those curves, and thankfully it was all in the positive direction. So it was making things easier to get there. Partly because we knew we were going to be asking them to do other things. So for this, what we could really look at is, like, we knew the expected duration that it would take a player to complete these requirements. Some of one of the more difficult ones, on average, players are like, it's like a month-long kind of experience. That's like very late game content. And so for those kind of players, we don't need their XP to also be, earn 10 billion XP at that level, because we already know that at that point they're going to be, doing some quite long content. So yeah, this created that kind of opportunity where, because that content, there's opportunities to you can pay if you want to get through it quicker and things like that. So we're creating more incentives for players to jump through the game if they need to. Whereas something like XP, where it's just a grind to get there, it's a bit harder to incentivize other methods of progressing. But yeah, we are constantly though doing those fine tunings, and I think having a system like this gave us a lot more levers to play with than when we just had XP, where we were having to bump it up. And some of our late levels before doing this were it took ages to earn that XP, and it was a grind. Whereas we swapped it to more hey, you're already doing this content anyway, but if you complete it, you'll level up. And we got to play with a lot more and tune a lot more areas of the game. So it just gave us a lot more control over really tightening that experience for the players.
That's pretty much time.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, no, feel free, come chat if you want to talk more. Thank you.